Kal Kadosh, good evening. We're going to speak about Emunah Bitachon. There's a Ma'amar Bitachon to the Beis Halevi. It's a beautiful sefer that somebody just actually showed it to me. It's translated actually in English. Yeah, and I'm going to go through a little bit of it because I started reading it for the past few days with another Balabait, and I think it's actually very, very beautiful. So I wanted to share it with you. The Beis Halevi, he opens up the discussion of Bitachon, where he comes and he says, Chovata Bitachon ba b'psukim harber rabu misefor. He says, obligation of Bitachon, it actually comes in many, many different psukim, but there are too many to actually really count. Umi shemechaser bo, and somebody that is lacking Bitachon, avera gedolahi. It is a very grave sin. So obviously here in the footnotes, there's a lot of what to add, whether it's the Chavot HaLevavot speaking, why do people not have Bitachon, right? There in the Rabbeinu Bachya, comes and he says, right, the different things of whether it's because of ignorance or they don't understand what Bitachon is. Then he brings down also the Rabbeinu Yonah in Sharet Teshuvah, that when he says in the mitzvah, Ki tetzeh lamilchama lo ovecha, when you're going to go out to war, we're going to speak about it in the future in a few minutes also as well, and you should not be afraid of them. And there he comes and he says it's a concept that you're not allowed to be afraid even when you're going out to war, which we're going to speak about later on because that's something natural. I'm saying you're going out to war, you're not going to be afraid. But we're going to see about how important it is later on. So it says, somebody that's lacking bitachon, avera gedolahi, it is a grave sin. Okay? Now he says, va'avera zo atzma gorem lo lipol. Not only that, not only is not having bitachon already an avera, but rather that in itself causes a downfall. Why? It says, kema'amar hakatuv, just like the pasuk says, cherdat adam yiten mokesh uvoteach b'Hashem. A man's fear, it says here, a man's fear will place a snare, right? Will place a stumbling block. Uvoteach b'Hashem, but somebody that relies on Hashem Yesugav will be fortified. What exactly is that referring to? This pasuk in Mishle is talking about a person that has bitachon, that he's fortified. So Rabbeinu Bachya, again in Parashat Pinchas, compares one with bitachon to somebody that's hiding in a strong and a fortified tower. And a person is guaranteed protection from his enemies. So too, if somebody has bitachon, he's protected, right? It says the protection, he's protected from all around himself. Because for when a person is going to come and he's going to be afraid of something else and not relying on Hashem, that in itself places the stumbling block. Meaning beforehand, a person wouldn't have fallen. But now that the person's afraid, all of a sudden there's a stumbling block placed in front of him. And that's why it's there. It's there purposely. Uvoteach b'Hashem Yisugav. What does that mean here? That somebody that has bitachon on Hashem, he's fortified. Tegam me'atzara shayabo yinatzel. The exact opposite is with somebody that has bitachon. Even a tzara, even a suffering that he was supposed to have, he's going to be now saved from it because of the bitachon. Which means a person that does not have bitachon, right? Beforehand, he could have been walking around the path and nothing would have happened. The fact that he becomes afraid and he doesn't have bitachon, boom, Hashem puts him a stumbling block. And now that itself will cause him to fall. Somebody that has bitachon, it's exact opposite. Somebody that has bitachon, even if he had a suffering coming along his way, because of the merit of the bitachon, it takes it away from him. It will actually save them from it. Okay, Gimel. Right? Now we're talking about tabuteach v'enu yareh, yevshar laziko. So if somebody has bitachon and is not afraid of anything, he cannot be harmed. So the Beis Halevi now is going to bring, right, different sources to support this concept. And he says like this: B'Yirmiyahu ketiv, it's written, Al techat mipenehem, ki achitecha lifnehem. Yeah, this is in the Haftarah of Parashat Shemot, which is coming up right very, very soon. Divir Yirmiyahu ben Chizkiyahu, right? But it's Yirmiyahu 1:17, and also it's the Haftarah of one of the 3 weeks. The first one of the Shiva Sabet Tammuz is always Divrei Yirmiyahu. Yeah, it's always the first one. Divrei Yirmiyahu ben Chizkiyahu, the first one of the 3 weeks. And then the last one is always Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amos. Okay? So he says, what does that mean? Al techa mipenehem, don't be frightened of them. Maybe you are going to become broken of them. Masechet Berachot, right? Yehuda ben Natan avashakil v'az libated Rav Hamnuna. So it says in the Gemara Masechet Berachot, right? Daf Samech Amud Aleph 68:1. It said over there, Yehuda ben Natan was following along after Rav Hamnuna, right? And all of a sudden, Rav Hamnuna came and he sighed. They go, oh. Sometimes you hear a lot of people go, oh. Yeah, and you start, they start sighing. So he comes and he says, Amarle, Yisurim bayahu gavra latruya nefshet. He says, what, you want to bring afflictions on yourself? Why are you sighing? You're doing like, oh, what? You want to bring afflictions, right? Many times that happens. Sometimes the children, they do that. The parents ask them for something, or sometimes the wife asks the husband for something. And what do you say? Oh, yeah, he starts doing something like a sigh. Yeah? So he comes, this is a Gemara. And the Gemara, he comes, huh? Oh la la, yeah. He says, so the Gemara, he comes and he says, I don't understand you. Rav Hamnuna tells him, right, to Yehuda ben Natan, you want to bring afflictions upon yourself? Tichtiv, pachad bachadti vayetani. Right, it's written in Iyov, because I feared, right, a fright, it has overtaken me. Which means, right, this concept is also the Maharal, Netivot Olam also, he explains that he explains that we're talking about like a thick tree branch extending over a large deep river, and the tree branch is lying across the floor. So anybody, the Maharal observes, will be able to walk on a tree branch lying on the floor, or even slightly above the ground. But in the first scenario, if it's on top of the river, right, only a very daring person would do it, because if he's not careful, he falls in. Right? That means if you have right now a branch and the branch is all over the floor, you would stand on top of the branch and you would walk on the branch. Why? Because worst case scenario, you fall onto the ground. You're right on the ground. Right? It's not high up, so you would do it. But if that exact same branch is going over a big river, right? Not too many people are going to start walking on that branch, right? No matter how low it is on the ground, on the river, right? Nobody would, it's very, very difficult. And what's the difference? The difference is fear. So he says, when the tree branch is lying across the floor, we're not afraid to walk on it. Therefore, we can easily balance our way across it. But when the same very branch is extended across a wide, deep river, we are afraid, and the fear itself causes us to fall. Thus, when we are afraid of something, the fear itself actually causes us the fall, the downfall. You understand? No, 100%. Yeah, 100%. No, 100%. But what he's trying to say, though, is that it's something very interesting, is that the concept that we're bringing down is that many times the fear in itself will cause a person to fall. Meaning, if it wasn't for the fear, he wouldn't have fallen. And that's why one of the first things that people are trained to do before when they do all these types of acrobats and right away, they have to get rid of the fear. They're not afraid of anything, not even death. Why? Because if they're afraid, there's nothing what to do. Yeah, if there's afraid, there's nothing what to do. They can't do anything. The first thing, get rid of fear. Once they get rid of fear, now they can do whatever you want. You're right, 100%. You're not supposed to be afraid, 100%. Yeah. So the Beis Halevi now explains, according to this, in the Torah that we just brought down from the Rabbi Yunan a minute ago. Va'avur ken ketiv, and therefore it's written, ki tetzeh lamilchama al oivecha, when you're going to go out to war, v'ra'ita sus v'rechev, you're going to see the chariots and the horse riders, lo tiram yehem, do not be afraid of them. He says, why? Harambam minyana mitzvot mitzvot la ta'aseh. The Rambam, in the counting of his mitzvot, when he was counting all the mitzvot, he went and he counted it as one of the commandments. He said, b'cheshbon alavin, in the negative commandments, he went and he said, shayareh b'milchama overa lo ta'aseh zeh. If you're afraid and you go out to war, you just transgress this biblical command. Right? A negative commandment in the Torah. Lo ta'aseh b'Torah. V'imaya lo yira hayachozer me'orchei ha'milchama. He says, if you were afraid, you would come back from the war. But it says in the pasuk, go back. Because since he's afraid, he says this in itself could make him actually be, weak. It could actually make him fall. You understand? Because besides the fact of the morale of the other soldiers, it will actually make him get caught. Because every war of Israel was never in their strength and their military might, but rather their spiritual might. We don't win wars with our fighter planes. Not with their F-15s or F-22s, right? Or F-35s or nothing. Oh, okay. So nothing. Not F-35s, nothing whatsoever. How do we win the war? We win wars with our bitachon. Only when we are quiet and reliance, that will be our might. And it's written in Tilim, Hashem, I'm not afraid. What can a man do to me? Meaning that's the concept, because what can a man do to me if I have my bitachon in Hashem? The fact that I'm not afraid, nobody could ever do anything to me. If I'm not afraid, nobody could touch me. If I'm afraid, then they could do whatever they want. But if I'm not afraid, nobody can move a finger. Okay? Then it says, Hayida, this is chapter 4, the fear of a human being, that actually comes when we forget Hashem Yitbarach. Meaning, if a person becomes afraid of another human being, it means that we forgot Hashem. It says, why? Why? Because this is a pasuk. The pasuk says in Yeshaya, right? Who are you that you're going to be afraid of a human being which is an enosh, which is he's going to die, he's immortal. At the end of the day, they die. Human beings die. And of men who will be made as grass, right? That's chatzidi naten. He will be given over like grass. But tishkach Hashem osecha, he's going to forget. You've forgotten Hashem who made you, your maker. And then you're going to be afraid, right? That he was the one that he spread out the heavens, set the foundations of the earth, and therefore you're terrified continually. So he says, if a person would just pay attention that everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there's no creature in this world that has the possibility to change the decree. Not to change it, not to diminish it, to make it more, not like mamash a needle point. Not to make it earlier or later, not even one moment. Just like the pasuk says, he is unique, who can contradict him? So therefore he's not going to be afraid of anybody. Just like it says in the pasuk, Hashem li lo ira, ma ya'aseh li adam. He says, Hashem is for me. I'm not going to be afraid. Why? Because what can a person do to me? One second. Very good. So this morning, somebody asked me something very similar. I'll get to it in 1 second. Uchtivin, it says, Vehu yashkitu mi arshia. And it's also written, who's going to be, it says over here, it's similarly written in Yov, when Hashem grants a person serenity, who can cause the person turmoil? Which means if Hashem is the one that comes and he says that we're going to be tranquil, nobody could come and cause us anything other. And the same thing, vice versa, which means HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one 100% in control. So to answer the question that was just asked, right? He asked Mitzad Malchut. There's a concept of Yirata Malchut. The other person, he asked me, the other Balabait, he went and he asked me, right? Something very similar. He told me, but what about fearing of our parents? So I went and I told him, 1 second, right? Ronen tells us, right, fearing of Malchut. The other Ronen tells us is fearing of the parents. I told them, you forgot another few fears. Fearing of your rabbi and fearing of, no, you don't have to fear your wife. Some people are afraid of their wives. It's true. Some people. Some people are afraid of the wives, but there's no mitzvah to be afraid of the wife. But what is it? Of Hashem. Yirat Hashem. So how do we answer it up? So I went and I answered him like this. I said very, very simple. Here, what are we trying to do? There's a commandment in the Torah to fear, whether it is our parents, right? But that's written in the Torah Mefurash. It says, right, when we talk about kabed et avicha v'et imecha, you have to respect them. But ishimo ve'aviv tirau, right? You have to actually come and you have to fear them. There's written actually fear. So it's not only just love, it's fear. By HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? It's li'ira et Hashem elokecha, right? It's written yirat Hashem. You have to fear Hashem. So it's written Mefurash in the Torah. Fear. By the Malchut, it's something a little bit more natural, right? You have to respect the king, right? Right? You have to be careful that the king is not supposed to forget Hashem, even with him. He's always supposed to go around with the Sefer Torah. But it's not the exact same concept as a fear. But now what happens here? There's Yirat Hashem, Yirat of the parents, Yirat of the rabbis. They learn from V'avta et Hashem elkecha et lerabot tamidei chachamim, right? Sorry, et Hashem elkecha tira. And there it was L'Rabot Tamidei Chachamim, which means you have to fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does the et come to add? So Shimon and Soni, if you remember, he stopped making all the ets in the Torah. He stopped being Doresh, all the ets of the Torah, but he said, who could you fear that is like God? Until Rabbi Akiva, that he was an Amaretz at the beginning, if you remember. And he was the one that he said that he would take any Tamid Chacham and he would bite him like a donkey. He would completely break him apart. He would destroy him. But then when he became a rabbi, he realized that the et is coming to include who? Tamidei Chachamim. So therefore you have to fear Tamidei Chachamim as well. So okay, fine. So now, but what is the concept behind it? So the answer is very, very simple. Hashem told us there's a concept of love and a concept of fear. Why do we need to have both? So in Pirkei Avot, when it speaks about this, when it says, schar mitzvah is mitzvah, schar avera avera, right? There, the Rav Vadim Bar Tanura, he comes and he says that we have to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu of both. Why do we have to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu of both? He says because each one has something that the other one doesn't have. If you want, just to make it very, very on a simple level, one is on the positive and one is on the negative. Why? For example, if you love your parent, what do? You want to serve them. You want to bring them things, right? You're going to make them food that they like. You want to serve them. That's called love of a parent. What is fear? Fear is I'm not going to do something. Yeah. Now, what happens, for example, if I'm only afraid? So if I'm only afraid of my parent, right, or my rabbi or whoever it is, so then what happens? What happens is I'm not going to do something. But what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that the second that they can never catch me or they will never find out about it, I'm going to do it because I'm not afraid anymore. Which means, right, that why am I going to do it? Because there's no fear. If I had love, I would still not do it. Because if I had love, I wouldn't do something that they don't like. And the same is vice versa. Yeah, if I only fear a person but I don't love them, I'm not going to come and do something above and beyond. You understand? So therefore, it's very, very important. Just to go back, now we explained, right, what the difference between love and fear. And since we already know what the difference between love and fear is, that's why we're obligated in both. So when the Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself commanded us to fear, whether it's our parents, whether it's to fear, right, our rabbis, whether it's to fear the kingdom, right, because they're right, the Pirkei Avot actually says about the fear of kingdom, but there it says we have to thank the fear of kingdom, and it's not like a biblical commandment that we have to fear of the kingdom. It says we have to thank the fear of kingdom, because if not, right, it would be a jungle. Everyone would just swallow everyone alive. You understand? So that's why we have to be thankful that there's the kingdom and the fear of all these things. Why? Because again, if it wasn't for that, it would be a problem. But it's not changing anything here, because here what we're doing is we're afraid not because of the essence. We're afraid, what are they going to do to me? So when I'm afraid of my father, I'm not afraid that now he's going to come and he's going to do to me. I'm afraid of him because he's a person that I have to have awe of. I have to be a person that I have to have fear of him, but not because of yirata onesh, not because of fear of punishment or fear of what's going to happen to me, but rather just a natural fear. And that's here, there's not katam of this. Because here we're talking about I'm afraid somebody's going to do something to me. So since I'm afraid somebody's going to do something to me, so that's what's going to happen. Okay? Which one? A fear out of respect, yes. Okay? So this is the last one we're going to do, which is Hamitchanen l'rodfo domeh lemukeh right shebocheh u'marbeh tachlilim lashev lamateh. If you're going to rely upon, right, imploring one's tormentor for mercy, it's like you're comparable to a battered person that he's begging for mercy from the rod and the cane that beat him. Which means like this. Imagine right now you come and you start begging for mercy. When you beg for mercy from the other human being, in essence, right, somebody took a stick and they hit you. And now you come and you start talking to the stick. Please don't beat me up. Please don't hit me. What? So he's saying, don't do this. That's exactly what you're doing. Right? Why? So he's going to explain. He says, and even at a time when a person is harmfully dominated by another human being, Hashem, right? Khalila, he should understand that everything comes from Hashem. And the man who harmed him is only just a rod, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes those who are liable. So he says, just like the pasuk says, "Hoi Ashur shevet api." Woe to Ashur. Ashur is Assyria. Yeah, that they are the rod, they are the shevet, right, of my anger. Uchtiv od sham, and there it says, what, does the axe pride itself over the one chopping it? What, the axe is going to start becoming haughty over the one that's using it? He says, and if so, when he's going to come and start asking mercy from someone that's pursuing him, right? And he doesn't ask for Hashem for help. Right? It says it's as if he's asking, mercy from the stick instead of asking the mercy from the guy that's beating him up. That's what he's doing. There's no foolishness greater than this. Just like the pasuk says, Aram mikedem plishtim me'achor ve'yochlu et Yisrael bechol peh. Right? It says in the pasuk to do the nations that they went against the 10 tribes in Yeshayahu. It says Aram was from the east, right? The Palestinians were right from the west. Then it says they consumed Israel with every mouth. What does that mean? But still, it didn't subside. So they didn't ask from Hashem, which means they went and they were just a tool of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We had to pray to Hashem that He should have mercy on us. So obviously, if you're going to now request from the rod, it's not going to help now. You're going to start, begging from the stick that it shouldn't beat you up. What's it going to help? Kitazik, but it will only bring him harm. Right? Why? Because since you misdirected the plea, which means you went and you asked the wrong direction, the wrong person, and you didn't have the recognition that it comes from Hashem, so that in itself will result in further punishment. Right? And therefore, that's where we're going to finish today. But I think it's actually very, very beautiful because Mamash, it actually just teaches us a little bit of what it is, Bitachon, that we have to have in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every single word here is obviously Mamash gold. And Melina, that we continue Bezrat Hashem another day.